I stared at the empty fridge, my stomach growling loud enough to echo in the silence. $12.37. That's all I had left. The credit card I'd used to pay rent was maxed out, and the landlord's last text glared at me from my phone. Final notice. "Mom?" Sophia called from the living room. "Can we get pizza tonight?" I shut the fridge door hard, blinking back tears. "Not tonight, sweetie," I said, forcing a lightness I didn't feel. My boss, Karen, called me into her office an hour later. Her expression was stiff, her hands folded neatly on the desk. "Emily," she said, avoiding my eyes, "we're restructuring. Your position is being eliminated." The words hit me like a slap. "Eliminated? But I've worked here for 8 years." Karen sighed, sliding a severance package across the desk. "It's not personal. Sign this, and HR will process your final check." I stared at the papers, my vision blurring. Final check. How would I pay rent? Buy groceries? "Do I have a choice?" I asked weakly. She didn't answer. I sat in my car afterward, the steering wheel digging into my forehead as sobs racked my body. The eviction notice crumpled in my hand felt like a death sentence. Where do we go now? My phone buzzed. Another call from the landlord. I let it go to voicemail. That night, after tucking Sophia into bed on the couch, our furniture had been repossessed last week. I logged into our joint savings account. Mark hadn't touched it since the divorce. Or so I'd thought. Balance: $0.00. I refreshed the page, my hands shaking. Number no. Transaction history showed withdrawals. $5,000 here, $3,000 there. All transferred to an account I didn't recognize. A quick Google search revealed the truth. Mark's new girlfriend owned a luxury boutique downtown. I called him, my voice trembling with rage. "You stole from Sophia. From me." He sighed, as if I were a minor inconvenience. "Emily, be reasonable. I needed liquidity for her business." "Liquidity?" I choked out. "You wiped out our savings." "We're divorced," he snapped. "Your poor choices aren't my problem anymore." The line went dead. I slumped against the wall, the phone slipping from my hand. The apartment was silent, except for Sophia's soft breathing. The peeling wallpaper, the flickering light bulb, the empty fridge, all reminders of how far I'd fallen. Mark's words echoed in my mind. Your poor choices. But he was the one who'd gambled away our money during the marriage. He was the one who'd left. And now, he was the reason I had nothing left. I slid to the floor, hugging my knees to my chest. Tears streamed down my face, hot and silent. What do I do now? The food stamps application stared back at me from the computer screen. My hands hovered over the keyboard, trembling. I'd never imagined I'd be here, filling out forms to prove I couldn't afford to feed my daughter. Sophia walked into the room, her backpack slung over one shoulder. "Mom," she asked hesitantly, "are we going to be okay?" I forced a smile, swallowing the lump in my throat. "Of course, sweetie," I lied. But deep down, I wasn't sure anymore. I sold everything of value that week. My grandmother's necklace, the TV, even the laptop I'd used for work. The pawn shop owner barely glanced at the items before handing me a wad of cash that felt like an insult. By Friday, we'd moved into a tiny apartment with peeling wallpaper and no heat. The radiator rattled loudly when I tried to turn it on, but it never warmed the room. Sophia curled up under layers of blankets on the couch, while I sat at the kitchen table staring at unpaid bills scattered across the surface. My phone buzzed constantly with calls from creditors. "Ms. Carter," one voice said sternly, "your account is seriously delinquent." Another call came minutes later. "If you don't make a payment soon, we'll escalate this matter." I stopped answering altogether, letting the calls go straight to voicemail. Every buzz felt like another reminder of how far I'd fallen. At a community center one afternoon, I sat in the corner pretending to read while Sophia attended an art class. That's when I overheard her, an older woman speaking to a group gathered around her. "Track every penny you spend," she said firmly, holding up a notebook filled with handwritten numbers. "You can't fix what you don't see." Her words stuck with me as she continued explaining how small changes had helped her pay off debt years ago. But shame kept me from approaching her. What would she think of me? I thought bitterly. I'm too far gone for advice. That night, as I sat at the kitchen table crying silently over another pile of bills, Sophia walked in and froze. "Mom," she said softly, sitting beside me and placing her hand on mine. "You have to try something." Her words hit me harder than anything else had in weeks. The next morning, I went back to the community center and found Mrs. Thompson organizing papers at a desk. "Excuse me?" I said hesitantly, my voice shaking. "I overheard you yesterday. Can you help me?" She looked up and studied me for a moment, before nodding slowly. "It won't be easy," she warned, pulling out a blank notebook and sliding it across the table toward me. But for the first time in months, I felt something other than despair. I felt hope. I found Mrs. Thompson at the community center, organizing papers at a desk in the corner. My heart pounded as I approached her, clutching my bag tightly. "Excuse me," I said hesitantly, my voice trembling. "I overheard you talking about budgeting last week. Can you help me?" She looked up, her sharp eyes studying me for a moment before nodding. "Sit," she said firmly, gesturing to the chair across from her. I sat down, feeling both nervous and hopeful, as she pulled out a blank notebook and slid it across the table toward me. "This won't be easy," she warned, tapping the cover with her pen. "You're going to track every expense for the next 30 days, every penny." I frowned, flipping through the empty pages. "Tracking $5 coffees isn't going to fix this," I muttered. "Every dollar counts," she said sharply, leaning forward. "You'll never stop bleeding money if you don't see where it's going." Her words hit me harder than I expected. That evening, I sat at my kitchen table with the notebook open in front of me, staring at the first blank page. It felt ridiculous, writing down every little expense, but I couldn't shake Mrs. Thompson's voice. Every dollar counts. Reluctantly, I started jotting down everything: groceries, bills, gas for the car, even the $3 tip I gave to the delivery driver. By the end of the month, the numbers horrified me. $400 on takeout, $150 on unused subscriptions, streaming services I hadn't opened in months, $200 on impulse buys, things I didn't even remember purchasing. I stared at the totals in disbelief. How did it get this bad? At our next meeting, I slid the notebook across the table to Mrs. Thompson. She flipped through it silently before nodding. "You're bleeding money," she said firmly, tapping one of the pages with her pen. "Plug the leaks first." "Plug the leaks," I repeated weakly. "Cancel subscriptions you don't use," she said without hesitation. "Cook at home instead of ordering takeout. Pay bills on time to avoid fees." Her advice felt overwhelming, but for the first time in months, I felt like there was a way forward. That night, I sat down with my laptop and canceled every subscription except for internet. The only thing I truly needed right now. The streaming services were gone. So were the meal kits and gym memberships I hadn't used in months. Meal prepping became my new routine. Every Sunday evening, I stood in my tiny kitchen, chopping vegetables and portioning out meals for the week. Gone were the days of takeout dinners and coffee shop lattes. Every penny now had a purpose. As exhausting as it all felt, the tracking, canceling, cooking, I could see progress for the first time in years. The numbers in my notebook were starting to make sense. Mrs. Thompson's words echoed in my mind. "Plug the leaks first." And for once, I felt like I was finally patching them up. I sat on the floor of my apartment, surrounded by piles of things I used to think I couldn't live without. Designer handbags, electronics, shoes I'd worn to meetings that felt like a lifetime ago. Each item was a reminder of the life I thought I was building. Now, they were just liabilities. I picked up a leather handbag, running my fingers over the gold clasp before tossing it into the sell pile. It's just stuff, I told myself. Stuff won't pay the bills. Selling everything else of value became my new normal. The pawnshop owner barely glanced at my items before handing me a wad of cash that felt like an insult. "This is the best I can do," he said flatly, sliding the money across the counter. I nodded stiffly and walked out, clutching the bills as if they were my lifeline. The second job came next. Cleaning offices at night wasn't glamorous, but it paid enough to keep the lights on. Every evening after finishing my part-time day job, I grabbed my cleaning supplies and headed downtown. The work was grueling, scrubbing floors, emptying trash bins, but every dollar chipped away at the mountain of debt looming over me. Sophia hated it. "Why can't we get pizza anymore?" she asked one night as I reheated leftovers for dinner. Her voice was sharp, frustrated. "Because we're saving money," I replied evenly, trying to keep my tone calm. She crossed her arms and glared at me. "Saving money sucks." Her words stung more than they should have, but I didn't argue. She wouldn't understand, not yet. My friends didn't understand either. "Why are you acting broke?" Lisa asked one afternoon as we walked through the mall together. She gestured toward a sale rack filled with dresses. "This stuff is practically free." "I can't," I said simply, keeping my hands firmly in my pockets. She rolled her eyes and laughed. "You're no fun anymore." Her words hurt, but I didn't let them show. One night, as I sat on the couch folding laundry after another exhausting shift, my phone buzzed with an incoming call. Mark's name flashed across the screen. "What do you want?" I asked tiredly. "Mia," he began smoothly, as if nothing had happened. "I need a loan. Just $2,000 to hold me over." I laughed bitterly, gripping the phone tightly. "You stole everything from me, Mark. Why would I ever help you?" "Family helps family," he said smugly. I hung up without another word, shaking with anger. At our next meeting, Mrs. Thompson handed me a book with a worn cover titled, "The Wealthy Stay Wealthy by Living Below Their Means." "Read this," she said simply, sliding it across the table toward me. That evening, as I flipped through its pages after finishing my shift, something clicked. Wealth isn't about what you earn. It's about what you keep. The office was quiet that night. The hum of fluorescent lights and the faint sound of my mop scraping against the floor filling the silence. I was halfway through cleaning the break room when Lisa, one of my co-workers, leaned against the counter and smirked. "You know," she said casually, her voice low, "there's an easier way to make money here." I glanced at her, confused. "What do you mean?" She pulled out a stack of papers and waved them in front of me. "Falsify some invoices. Cash under the table. No one ever notices." I froze, my stomach twisting. "You steal from the company?" "It's not stealing," she said with a shrug. "It's just taking what they won't miss. You could make an extra $200 a week. Easy." Her words hung in the air like poison. $200 a week could pay off my debts faster. Get Sophia those new shoes she'd been asking for. But something about it felt wrong. That night, as I lay awake staring at the ceiling, Mrs. Thompson's voice echoed in my mind. Shortcuts ruin lives. I thought about Mark, how his shortcuts had ruined not just his life, but mine too. I couldn't go down that path, no matter how tempting it seemed. The next day, I walked into work and told Lisa firmly, "I'm not interested." She rolled her eyes and muttered something under her breath before walking away. But I didn't care. I'd made my choice. Later that evening, as I sat at my kitchen table updating my budget notebook, I checked my brokerage account out of habit. My heart skipped a beat when I saw it. $50 deposited into my account. My first dividend payment from the stock Mrs. Thompson had helped me buy. $50. It wasn't much, barely enough for groceries, but it felt monumental. It was honest money, money that had worked for me while I slept. I stared at the screen, tears welling in my eyes. This is what progress feels like, I thought. Meanwhile, news about Mark began circulating online. His new business had collapsed after a lawsuit revealed fraudulent practices, misappropriated funds, fake contracts, unpaid workers. I read the headlines with a mix of anger and relief. Karma had finally caught up with him. As I sat at the table that night, reviewing my budget and planning my next investment, I realized something. Integrity mattered more than speed. Mrs. Thompson had taught me that wealth wasn't just about numbers. It was about building something solid and lasting. And for the first time in years, I felt like I was doing exactly that. I sat at my kitchen table, the morning sunlight streaming through the window. My laptop was open, and my portfolio glowed on the screen. $10,000 in savings. $10,000. It had taken 2 years of sacrifices. Long shifts, cleaning offices, relentless budgeting, and meal prepping. But I'd done it. Every credit card was paid off, and my savings account was finally something to be proud of. The cleaning job had been grueling, but it wasn't enough on its own. A year ago, Mrs. Thompson had encouraged me to start a side hustle teaching budgeting workshops for single moms at the community center. At first, only a few people showed up, tired moms juggling bills and crying babies. But word spread quickly. Now, every session was packed with women desperate for answers. "How did you start?" one participant asked during a workshop last week, her pen poised over her notebook. I smiled and held up Mrs. Thompson's notebook, its cover worn from years of use. "By tracking every penny," I said simply. "It's not glamorous, but it works." She nodded thoughtfully, scribbling down notes as I explained how small changes had transformed my life. Later that evening, as I sat at my desk, updating my budget notebook, an email notification popped up on my screen. Mark's name flashed across the subject line, "I need your help." My stomach twisted as I opened it. His message was filled with apologies and pleas for money. "Mia," it read, "I know I've made mistakes, big ones, but I'm desperate. Please lend me $5,000 to get back on my feet." I stared at the email for a long time before pulling out Mrs. Thompson's notebook. Without hesitation, I scanned a copy of the first page, "Track every penny," and attached it to my reply. "This works better than scams," I wrote before hitting send. At our next workshop, I stood in front of a room filled with women who reminded me of where I'd been 2 years ago. Lost, scared, drowning in debt. "Rule 1, I said firmly, holding up the notebook again. "Track every penny." I saw heads nodding as I explained how budgeting had saved me. Not just financially, but emotionally too. That night, as I sat at my kitchen table reviewing my portfolio again, a sense of peace washed over me. The numbers weren't just numbers anymore. They were proof of everything I'd overcome. Mrs. Thompson's voice echoed in my mind. Resilience isn't about never falling. It's about getting back up every time you do. And now? Now I was standing taller than ever. The bookstore buzzed with quiet energy, the kind that comes from people flipping through pages and whispering about which book to buy. I stood at the front of the room, a microphone in one hand and my book, From Food Stamps to Financial Freedom, in the other. 5 years ago, I began, my voice steady but filled with emotion. I was sitting in a tiny apartment with no heat, staring at a bank account that had less than $20 in it. The crowd leaned forward, their eyes fixed on me. I felt like I'd failed. Not just myself, but my daughter too. But then someone handed me a notebook and told me, "Track every penny." I held up Mrs. Thompson's notebook, its cover now faded from years of use. That notebook saved my life. After the event ended, I sat at a table signing books and chatting with attendees. "You've inspired me," one woman said as she handed me her copy to sign. "I've been struggling for years, but now I feel like there's hope." I smiled warmly and wrote a message inside her book. "Track every penny. It's where freedom starts." As the line dwindled, I spotted a familiar face standing near the back of the room. Mrs. Thompson was there, her arms crossed and her expression calm but proud. I stood up quickly and walked over to her. "Mrs. Thompson," I said, my voice catching slightly. "You came." She nodded with a small smile. "I wouldn't miss it." "Thank you," I said softly, tears threatening to spill over. "For everything." She patted my shoulder gently. "You did the work, Emily. I just pointed you in the right direction." That night, as I sat at my desk reviewing my portfolio, a sense of peace washed over me. Passive income now covered all my bills, a milestone that felt surreal after years of struggle. Sophia walked into the room holding her cap and gown from graduation earlier that day. She hugged me tightly and whispered, "Thank you for teaching me how to save early, Mom. I'm graduating debt-free because of you." Her words hit me harder than anything else that day. For so long, I'd worried about failing her, about not being enough. But now I realized she saw me as someone who had fought back against impossible odds. As I closed my laptop and looked around my cozy home office, I thought about how far we'd come, from food stamps to financial freedom. Mrs. Thompson's words echoed in my mind. Pass it on. And that's exactly what I plan to keep doing.